Not sure if she was at that march in Ottawa. I'm going to ask her. Tanya Granic-Allen, Campaign Life Coalition. Were you there?
I was.
You were?
I was there with my whole family.
How many people? I mean, what, 10,000?
Tried 25.
Really?
Yeah, about 25,000.
It got so little coverage in media.
It received more coverage than in previous years, but yeah, there's still a lot of room to be had. When you have international news agencies coming to cover this and your own local agencies in their own backyard won't cover this march, it's the hugest march, the hugest rally that happens on Parliament Hill.
You probably know this, that until the Million Man March in Washington, the largest gathering of people in Washington, D.C., the capital of the most powerful, significant country in the world, was a pro-life march.
Oh, very good.
And there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people there. The Washington Post didn't even mention it had occurred.
Yeah, and that's just disgusting to hear that. I mean, again, you mentioned freedom of speech, freedom of expression. That's the crux of this matter here, is that at least get the information, the voices out, so that people can change their hearts and minds and know the truth about this matter, that unborn children deserve protection in law.
Right. Now, later on in the show, we're talking to Leela Rose, who's an American activist. But Campaign Life, it's more than just the abortion issue. You've heard this many times. People will say, oh, you're so obsessed. It's the only thing you talk about. I talk about soccer far more often than I speak about abortion. But it is a very important issue. But there are others. There are others that concern you.
Well, there are others. But again, the crux of the argument comes down to the full and legal recognition of human life from conception till death. And that kind of protection needs to happen in Canadian law. And until that protection is seen and human rights are fully given to all citizens and all persons, the pro-life movement will not stop in Canada.
What about the argument that you only care about getting them born? After that, you don't care about them? Oh,
well, that's hogwash. I mean, there's so many branches of the pro-life movement who are involved directly in not only just doing sidewalk counseling, but then helping to support women after they've given birth. I remember even as a teenager having drives to collect diapers and formula and all sorts of things for mothers who had changed their minds on aborting their children and supporting them. And that's really also what this, when we have all these programs in the state, they need to help support women as well.
Well, the most famous pro-lifer in the world, I would say, is the Pope. And just a few weeks ago, he came out with his statement, a very important one, not quite an encyclical, and it wasn't infallible, but it's very important, stating that the economy has to change. We have to make sure people are looked after. There's an equality, that the poor have to be regarded with respect. So, and he is the most famous pro-lifer, because in that same document, by the way, he spoke about the importance of the unborn. But it's not that people who oppose abortion say, we don't care about economic circumstances, we don't care about social justice, we don't care about education. All of those things are vital. And in fact, in this country, virtually all the pro-lifers I know are very opposed to the death penalty, too.
Well, that's it. And again, it comes down to what kind of society do we have if we are brutally killing the most innocent members of our society? How can we responsibly take care and look after the ones who are living? What kind of culture are we bringing? And that's the culture of death that we see so pervasive in Canada. But I think the tide is changing. I'm very optimistic. There have been numerous motions and legislative initiatives that have come through Parliament. We're seeing a little bit more of an openness. The public is more engaged in this argument than it has in previous years. And I'm hoping in my lifetime that we will see this change.
The pro-life movement looks very different. You're aware of that, surely. I'm not sure if this was a purposeful decision, but I came to Canada in 1986, 87, and I wasn't really involved in the pro-life movement in the UK. I was pro-life, but I wasn't particularly active. The pro-lifers I met, and how should I put this? There were a lot of older people who didn't smile a huge amount. Now it seems to be full of attractive young women who smile all the time. Did you sit down and say, we've got to change the way we look? Did you do that?
No, but what I did do is say, hold on a second, I'm looking around this room, 1 in 4 of my peers is missing. And that's because of the lack of abortion law, the lack of protection under law in Canada. And that really hit a chord.
But why is it so many young people, young women in particular now? And I'm not just saying this. I mean, if you look at any demonstration, any gathering, there's a lot of young women who are pro-life. And I don't think that was the case a generation ago.
Well, I think we also have seen the effects of abortion in Canada. Like, you're talking about post-abortion syndrome and how many friends and peers of ours who have maybe had an abortion, and we see the effects that it has had on their life.
Yeah.
And I think we don't want that trauma for our country, and we want to look after people and say, you know what, let's be informed about your choice and think of what you're doing, that this will have an impact probably for the rest of your life.
How do your friends and peers and contemporaries react to you and regard you?
I think, they know that I research all my information, that I take things on a zero level, and I build up my arguments, and they know I'm very passionate about life. I think they also feel that if they were ever in a circumstance where their human rights are going to be quashed, they know who to call.
I try and understand through my kids, vicariously, the different generations they represent and people around me. On, for example, same-sex marriage, I think that debate is absolutely over. Young people, the next generation, they don't understand why you would have any opposition to it. So we just have to agree to disagree. But on the abortion issue, it's still wide open. I meet lots of young people, they're not religious, they're not political, but they say, well, yeah, I'm not sure, but I don't really like the idea of it. So this is an ongoing debate.
Oh, it is. And to me, it's akin to the slavery situation in the United States. The people would not rest until the blacks were given freedom and slavery was abolished. This is the same kind of situation, the same kind of momentum we see in Canada, that I will not rest, and many of our young peers and Canadians won't rest until we see the enslavement of the unborn abolished.
I know some people will react to what you just said, but I think you're quite right. If you read the parliamentary debates in Britain in the 1780s and 90s and the early 19th century, Wilberforce and Clarkson and Fox and Pitt and so on, there are many people who they disagree with those who want to abolish slavery. They don't say slavery is a good thing. They say, yes, okay, it's not a good thing, but we have to allow it, because if we don't allow it, other people the French will simply take it. And there's always a reason for it. And it's very interesting how at the beginning they thought it was being extremist, and they become more moderate, and within a generation they're actually part of the governing class. So I think there's a great deal of hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.